she hid her pain until one letter exposed it all. The soft glow of a late afternoon sun filtered through the half-closed blinds, casting delicate stripes across Emma's living room floor. The air smelled faintly of coffee and old books, a comforting scent she had grown accustomed to over the past few months. Emma, a young woman in her late 20s, sat curled up on her worn beige sofa, her laptop open but forgotten in front of her. She wasn't typing and she wasn't scrolling. Instead, she stared at the screen with a vacant gaze, her mind adrift in memories that seemed as tangible as the rays of sunlight stretching across the room. Emma's apartment was small, an unassuming two-bedroom unit in a quiet neighborhood in Manchester, UK. She had lived there for almost 3 years, ever since she had moved out of her childhood home. The apartment was cozy, decorated with soft neutrals and warm wooden furniture, yet Emma rarely noticed it anymore. The once cheerful colors on the walls now felt muted, almost indifferent, reflecting the subtle void she carried within her. She had always been careful with her emotions, the kind of person who hid her sadness behind a practiced smile. Friends often described her as cheerful, always ready with a laugh or a light-hearted comment. But deep down, Emma's heart carried invisible scars, remnants of a relationship that had ended abruptly, leaving a sense of emptiness she couldn't articulate. The relationship had been her first serious love. James, with his charming smile and easy humor, had entered her life with the quiet intensity of a summer storm. At first, everything seemed perfect. They shared the same taste in music, loved similar foods, and could spend hours talking about books, films, or even the trivialities of daily life. Friends had envied their connection, calling them made for each other. Emma, too, had believed it. She had believed in the small magic of ordinary days, in the thrill of holding hands while walking through the streets, in the quiet moments of watching a film together, and the laughter that filled the apartment when James's old dog, Rufus, would inevitably create chaos. But one day, without warning, everything had changed. James had left. No argument, no big fight, just an abrupt disappearance from her life. A note left on the kitchen counter simply saying, "I need to find myself. I'm sorry." That's all. No explanation, no attempt at closure, no acknowledgement of the love they had shared. The days following his departure had been a blur. Emma had wandered through her apartment as if it were a strange, unfamiliar place. The furniture remained the same, the walls the same color, yet everything felt empty, hollow echoes of memories she no longer wanted to relive. Friends had tried to reach out, but she had politely declined. She needed space to process, to heal. But in reality, she had no idea how to heal from something that had left her so hollow. It wasn't the loneliness that bothered her most. She had grown used to being alone, finding comfort in small routines, her work, her few close friends, and her weekend hikes. It was the unresolved feeling, the questions that lingered like shadows. Why did he leave? Did he ever love me? Did he regret it? Each unanswered question was a quiet ache in her chest, one she learned to hide behind calm expressions and composed social interactions. Today, however, felt different. There was a strange anticipation, a fluttering in her stomach she hadn't felt in months. Her mailbox had a small envelope, cream-colored, with no return address. Her heart skipped a beat as she picked it up. The handwriting on the front was familiar, yet strange, almost like a whisper from the past. She carried it inside, set it gently on the coffee table, and for several minutes just stared at it. Finally, taking a deep breath, she tore it open. Inside was a folded sheet of delicate stationery, the kind you would expect from someone who had taken the time to write, not just type or text. Emma unfolded it carefully, almost reverently, as if the paper itself carried the weight of the words within. The letter began with a simple greeting. Dear Emma, I hope this letter finds you well. I know it has been a long time since we last spoke, and I am aware that I left without explanation. Please understand that it was never about you or the love we shared. I needed to step away to find clarity and peace in my own life. Yet in doing so, I have come to realize that some things cannot be left unsaid. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she read. The words were tentative, sincere, and heavy with unspoken emotion. She had expected nothing, yet the moment of holding someone's written thoughts, their raw vulnerability, made her feel alive again. The letter continued, recounting memories they had shared, moments James had treasured, mistakes he had made, and regrets he had carried in silence. What struck Emma most was the sincerity, the acknowledgement of pain, the willingness to confront emotions that he had once run from. Then she reached the part that froze her entirely. I recently received a letter from a little girl, someone I do not know personally, but who reminded me of the importance of gratitude, love, and the connections we forge in life. She spoke of family, of hope, and of prayers that travel beyond our understanding. It made me realize that sometimes love doesn't end, it transforms, it waits, it finds its way back in unexpected ways. I wish I could tell you this in person, but for now, I can only hope this letter reaches you and conveys a fraction of what I feel. Emma's tears welled in her eyes. She had thought she had buried this love, that she had closed the chapter in her heart, yet here it was again, resurfacing in the most unexpected form. A letter, small and delicate, bridging months of silence, rekindling emotions she had tried to forget. But the strangest part was the mysterious little girl mentioned in the letter. Emma could not make sense of it. Who was she? How did she know James? And why did her words affect him so deeply? The questions spun in her mind, a whirlwind of curiosity, concern, and something tender that had been dormant for too long. Emma set the letter down and looked around her apartment. Sunlight had shifted, casting a golden glow over familiar surroundings that now seemed new, almost magical. The room no longer felt empty. It felt like the starting point of something, a journey she could not yet define, but instinctively knew she had to follow. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope, a glimmer of something that whispered, maybe some stories are not over, only waiting for the right chapter to begin. And so, with the letter clutched in her hand, Emma decided she would find this little girl. She would uncover the connection that had so unexpectedly entered her life, and perhaps, along the way, find the answers she had longed for. Little did she know, the journey ahead would not only reveal secrets from James's past, but also uncover truths about her own heart, about forgiveness, trust, and the invisible threads that bind people together in ways they often cannot see. This was just the beginning, the first step in a path that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, loss, and the miraculous intersections of lives seemingly unrelated, yet profoundly connected. Emma could barely sleep that night. The letter lay beside her on the bedside table, its gentle presence pulling her thoughts away from the usual routines of her life. Every word replayed in her mind, James's sincerity, the mysterious little girl, and the notion that love could transform rather than vanish. The soft glow of the streetlights outside her apartment made her tiny room feel simultaneously comforting and confining. She needed answers. Morning came reluctantly. Emma brewed herself a strong cup of coffee, her hands still slightly trembling, and sat by the window, the letter open in front of her. She read it again, scanning for details that might lead her to the little girl. The letter mentioned the girl lived in the same city as James and had written something that touched his heart deeply. There were no names, no addresses, only vague hints and a gentle warmth emanating from the words themselves. Emma knew this wouldn't be easy, yet she felt compelled to try. She was driven not only by curiosity, but by a deep sense of empathy. If this little girl had influenced James, then maybe she could help Emma understand the layers of this mysterious story. She jotted down the few clues she had in a notebook, trying to organize her thoughts. By mid-morning, she was ready. Emma decided to begin at James's old neighborhood, hoping to find someone who might know about local community events, schools, or after-school programs where a letter like this could have been sent. She dressed in casual jeans, a cozy sweater, and her favorite sneakers, practical for walking and blending into the quiet streets. The streets were familiar, yet felt different that day. The sun shone brightly, glinting off the red brick townhouses and casting long shadows across neatly trimmed lawns. Emma walked slowly, eyes scanning for anything unusual, a small mailbox stuffed with letters, a community notice board, or perhaps a familiar face who might give her the first thread to follow. She paused outside a quaint bookstore that James had once mentioned as his favorite. The sign above the door read, "Whispering Pages" in faded bold letters. Pushing the door open, the familiar scent of old paper and polished wood enveloped her. The chime above the door announced her arrival. "Good morning," Emma said softly to the elderly shopkeeper, a gentlewoman named Mrs. Whitmore, who had known James since childhood. "I'm looking for something unusual. I don't know exactly what, but maybe you can help me." Mrs. Whitmore's eyes twinkled, sensing Emma's earnestness. "Unusual, you say? That's my specialty. What exactly are you looking for?" Emma hesitated, then explained about the letter, omitting the intimate details, but stressing the connection to James and a mysterious young girl whose words had touched him deeply. Mrs. Whitmore listened quietly, nodding slowly. "I may have seen something," she said finally, adjusting her glasses. "A few weeks ago, a young girl came in asking about sending letters to local authors and artists. She seemed very determined and serious for her age. Left quite an impression, I must say." Emma's heart raced. "Do you remember her name?" she asked eagerly. Mrs. Whitmore's head shook. "I'm afraid not, but she did mention a community center where she often went for after-school programs. That's probably your best lead." Emma thanked her profusely and left the store, her mind racing. She now had a place to begin, a community center that might hold the first tangible clue to the little girl's identity. The center was a short walk away, a cheerful building painted in soft pastel colors with murals of children playing on the exterior walls. Inside, the atmosphere was lively, filled with chatter, laughter, and the faint hum of activity from the various rooms. Emma approached the reception desk, introducing herself and explaining that she was looking for a young girl who had recently attended a writing or art program and had shown exceptional determination. The receptionist, a kind woman with dark curly hair named Miss Patel, looked thoughtful. "You might be talking about Lily. She's very creative, writes letters all the time, and has a unique way of expressing herself. Why are you asking?" Emma's pulse quickened. "Lily? Yes, that's the name. Do you know if she's around today?" Miss Patel smiled gently. "She should be in the art room. I can show you where she is." Emma followed, trying to calm her racing heart. Every step felt surreal. She had no idea how this encounter would unfold. What would she say? How would a child become a link to James, and more importantly, to the truths she had been seeking? As they entered the art room, Emma saw her, a small girl with a ponytail, focused intently on a watercolor painting of a bright garden. Sunlight streamed through the windows, highlighting the rich colors she was mixing. Lily looked up briefly, her eyes curious but cautious, sensing the stranger who had entered her space. Emma knelt down to Lily's level. "Hi, Lily. My name is Emma. I have something important I want to talk to you about. May I?" The girl hesitated, then nodded slowly, her tiny hands still clutching the brush. Emma felt a mixture of relief and nervous anticipation. She knew this first meeting could change everything. Emma introduced herself carefully, explaining in simple terms why she was there, without overwhelming Lily. She spoke of James, carefully omitting any adult complexities, and how a letter she had written had unexpectedly touched someone's life in a big way. Lily listened intently, her large brown eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of pride. "You mean my letter?" Lily asked, her voice small but firm. "Yes, your letter. It seems it reached the right person at the right time, and now it has brought me here." Lily's expression shifted from surprise to realization and then a shy smile. "Wow, I didn't know it would matter that much. I just wanted someone to feel happy." Emma felt a lump in her throat. The innocence and sincerity of the child's gesture struck her deeply. This was the moment when the abstract idea of hope and love transformed into a tangible connection. She realized that the small things, letters, thoughtful words, gestures of care, had the power to touch hearts in ways no one could anticipate. "Lily," Emma said softly, "you have a gift, not just in your art, but in your heart. And because of you, I think I can understand James better, and maybe even myself." The girl's smile widened, but then curiosity got the better of her. "And are you going to help him? Like find out why he's sad sometimes?" Emma nodded, touched by the child's perceptiveness. "Yes, I hope to, but I think we might need your help along the way." Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Really? Me?" "Yes, really," Emma confirmed. "You know things adults often overlook. You notice details that can make the difference. I think together we can make sense of things and maybe even bring some happiness back to someone who needs it." The next few hours passed in a mix of conversation, laughter, and quiet reflection. Lily shared stories of her family, the letters she had written, and how she had learned that small actions could ripple into larger consequences. Emma, in turn, shared carefully edited versions of her own life experiences, her challenges, and her search for answers, without overwhelming Lily with adult complexities. By the end of their first meeting, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. The encounter with Lily was more than just a clue. It was a reminder of the resilience of the human heart, the unexpected ways people can influence each other, and the magic that can be found in small acts of kindness and creativity. As she walked back to her apartment, the sun beginning its descent behind the horizon, Emma felt an unfamiliar lightness. The path ahead was still uncertain. There were still questions about James, about unresolved emotions, and about how everything would unfold. But for the first time in months, she felt a tangible spark of hope. She carried Lily's energy and sincerity with her, like a small flame against the darkness. The letter, the encounter, and the possibility of connecting with someone who unknowingly bridged the gap between the past and the present, all of it reminded Emma that life had a way of surprising those willing to seek the truth and open their hearts. And as the night settled over Manchester, Emma made a quiet promise to herself. She would follow this thread wherever it led, uncover every secret, and maybe, just maybe, help James, Lily, and herself find a resolution that had long been denied to all three. The morning light filtered softly through Emma's curtains, casting long streaks across her apartment floor. The events of the previous day weighed on her mind. Meeting Lily, seeing the innocence and determination in the girl's eyes, and understanding the powerful impact of her letter had shifted something inside Emma. She felt a quiet determination, the kind that only comes from being on the cusp of discovering something truly meaningful. With a notebook full of notes and Lily's descriptions of James' habits, favorite places, and childhood memories, Emma planned the day ahead. She knew this search wouldn't be straightforward. The clues were scattered, fragments of James's life, hints dropped by Lily, and the lingering mysteries of a man who had guarded his emotions so carefully. Emma dressed carefully, opting for comfortable walking shoes, jeans, and a warm cardigan. The crisp autumn air of Manchester encouraged her brisk pace as she stepped outside. She carried the notebook tightly as if it were a map leading her through the labyrinth of James's past. Their first destination was an old park that Lily had mentioned, where James used to spend time as a child. The park was a blend of nostalgia and melancholy, swings that had seen generations of children, benches worn smooth by time, and the faint smell of damp leaves that signaled the transition from autumn to winter. Emma followed Lily's directions, letting the memories of James, filtered through the little girl's account, guide her. He loved to feed the birds near the pond, Lily explained as they reached a quiet corner where a small pond reflected the morning sun. He would sit there for hours, even when it rained. He said it helped him think. Emma observed the area carefully. The benches, the pond, even the faint footprints on the muddy path, every detail mattered. She could almost picture James sitting there, lost in thought, perhaps composing letters in his mind or sketching ideas that never saw the light of day. From the pond, Lily led Emma to a small library, one of James's favorite places, according to her. The library was quaint, filled with the scent of old books and polished wood. Emma marveled at the quiet atmosphere, the way the sunlight pooled over the reading tables, and how each corner seemed to hold a story. James used to come here almost every day after school, Lily whispered. He liked the fiction section and sometimes the history books, but mostly he just wanted to sit somewhere people wouldn't bother him. Emma nodded, taking in the significance of these places. She realized that each location was not just a physical site, but a fragment of James's emotional landscape, a map of the experiences and memories that had shaped him. They spent hours moving from location to location, the old bridge overlooking the canal where James had thrown pennies for good luck, the bakery where he would buy pastries that reminded him of simpler times, and a small community hall where local events and charity drives often took place. At each site, Emma carefully documented everything, photographs, notes, and observations, building a comprehensive picture of the man whose life had intertwined with the little girl's letter. Despite the structured search, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. Each clue hinted at a deeper story, one that had remained hidden beneath James's calm exterior. The mystery was not just about the letter or the girl, but about the man who had been profoundly affected by a child's simple act of kindness. By late afternoon, Emma and Lily arrived at an old cafe that James used to frequent. The cafe, with its warm wooden panels and aromatic coffee, was bustling with activity. Lily pointed to a small corner near the window. He always sat there. He liked watching people pass by. He said it reminded him of the world outside and how everyone had their own stories. Emma took a deep breath. She felt closer than ever to understanding James's world, his emotions, and the subtle ways in which a child's heartfelt words had reached him. But there was still one more piece to uncover, a piece that might finally explain why he had closed off, why the letter had touched him so profoundly, and why Lily had become an unexpected bridge between the past and the present. The evening sun cast long shadows over the cobblestone streets as Emma and Lily walked back towards Emma's apartment. The day had been exhausting, filled with revelations and subtle emotional shifts. Yet a sense of anticipation lingered in the air. Emma had a feeling that something monumental was about to surface. Back at her apartment, Emma spread out all the notes, photographs, and sketches they had gathered. Lily watched curiously, sitting cross-legged on the floor, occasionally glancing at the images and maps. Emma's pen moved swiftly across the notebook as she connected the dots, drawing lines from one location to another, noting patterns, habits, and recurring themes in James's life. Then something caught her eye, a small reference in one of Lily's notes. It mentioned a charity project that James had volunteered for, helping underprivileged children in a nearby neighborhood. Emma's mind raced. Could it be that James's interactions with children, including this little girl, had roots in his attempts to make a positive impact on their lives? She immediately called Lily's attention to it. "Look here," she said, pointing to the note. "James wasn't just passive. He actively sought ways to help, to connect, to create meaning. This letter, it wasn't just a random act. It was part of something bigger." Lily's eyes widened. "So, my letter, it was?" Emma nodded. "It was significant, more significant than either of us realized at the time. You touched him in a way that resonated with everything he cared about, everything he had tried to do for others." They spent the next few hours going through the evidence, piecing together James's habits, locations, and emotional touchpoints. Every detail revealed a man shaped by both joy and sorrow, someone whose private grief had prevented him from fully embracing happiness. But through Lily's words, James had found a spark, a reminder that even the smallest gestures could bring light into a shadowed life. Emma felt a profound sense of responsibility. She wasn't just following a trail of clues, she was stepping into a story of human connection, empathy, and the transformative power of care. And Lily, in her innocence and honesty, had become the key to unlocking not just James's past, but also a future where understanding and healing could finally occur. By nightfall, Emma felt exhausted, yet invigorated. She knew the search wasn't over. There were still gaps to fill, mysteries to unravel, and emotions to confront. But she also knew that with Lily by her side, the path forward, though uncertain, was illuminated by sincerity, courage, and the undeniable power of human kindness. As Emma closed her notebook, she glanced at Lily. "Tomorrow we continue," she said softly. "There's more to discover, and I think we're closer than ever." Lily nodded enthusiastically, her eyes shining with the same determination that had led her to write that fateful letter. "I'm ready," she said. And in that moment, Emma realized that this journey, one that had begun with a single letter, was far more than a search for answers. It was a journey into the heart of human connection, revealing the extraordinary impact that small, thoughtful actions could have on lives that seemed at first glance ordinary. The night wrapped the city in silence, but within Emma's apartment, a quiet anticipation lingered. The story was unfolding, layer by layer, guided by innocence, empathy, and the unspoken bonds that linked a child, an adult, and the threads of their intertwined lives. The morning was still, quiet, and filled with a golden haze from the low sun. Emma awoke with a restless energy, her mind still swirling with yesterday's discoveries. The notebook lay open on the bedside table, pages filled with sketches, locations, and fragmented memories of James's life. Emma knew that every small clue was leading her closer to something monumental, a revelation that could explain why the letter had touched James so profoundly and why Lily's innocent gesture had initiated such a transformation. As Lily bounded into the apartment, excitement and determination in her eyes, Emma smiled. "Ready for today?" she asked. Lily nodded vigorously, clutching her small backpack with notebooks of her own, containing sketches and notes she had made about James's routines and favorite places. Their first stop was an old community center, a place James had visited frequently during his teenage years. It was here, according to Lily, that James had first learned to connect with people outside his immediate family, teaching younger children and helping organize events. The center, now slightly worn with peeling paint and creaky floorboards, retained a sense of warmth and familiarity. Emma walked slowly through the rooms, taking careful notes. Each corner held memories, she imagined, echoes of laughter, whispered secrets, and moments of triumph and failure. Lily pointed to a small stage in the back of the main hall. "He used to help set up the plays and events here," she said. "Even though he was quiet, people noticed how thoughtful and precise he was." Emma's pen moved swiftly across her notebook. Every small observation added depth to their understanding. She realized that James's reserved demeanor was not born from indifference, but from a deeply ingrained sense of responsibility and empathy. His actions, often silent and unnoticed, had ripple effects that shaped the lives of those around him, including Lily, though she was only now fully aware of it. Next, they visited a local cafe that James had frequented as a young adult. The smell of freshly baked bread and strong coffee filled the air. The barista, recognizing Lily from her previous visits, greeted them warmly. "Ah, James used to sit here, always in the corner by the window. He'd sketch things in his notebook, or sometimes just stare out at the street. Thoughtful boy," she said. Emma took photographs, noting the layout, the lighting, and the seating arrangements. "It's clear he cherished these small moments," she whispered to Lily. "He wasn't just passing time, he was observing, learning, and reflecting. This letter, your letter, tapped into that part of him, the part that remembers, the part that hopes even when he doesn't show it." They moved from location to location, a small library, a park, and a bridge overlooking the river. Each place revealed facets of James's personality that were hidden beneath his calm exterior. Emma began to understand the complexity of his life, a mixture of joy, sorrow, discipline, and compassion. The girl's letter was not just a random piece of paper, it had become a key unlocking years of suppressed emotion and carefully hidden vulnerability. As the evening approached, Emma suggested they head back to her apartment to review their findings. The golden light of sunset streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. The room, though modest, felt charged with anticipation. Spreading out all the photographs, sketches, and notes, Emma and Lily began to piece together a coherent narrative of James's life. It became evident that his reserved nature, the barriers he had put up around himself, and the emotional distance he maintained were not signs of coldness, but of protection. He had experienced moments of deep vulnerability and at times profound loss that had taught him caution and restraint. Lily, flipping through a series of photographs, stopped suddenly. "Emma, I think I see something," she said. "Look at this image of him at the library. He's sitting alone, but notice how he's positioned, facing the sunlight, away from everyone else. It's like he's inviting the light in, but keeping the world at a distance." Emma nodded, her heart tightening. "Yes, that's it. That's the visual representation of his emotional state. He craves connection, but fears disappointment, loss, and misunderstanding. And your letter, Lily, it bypassed all of that. It reached him where he thought no one could reach him." The night grew darker outside, but inside, Emma felt a sense of clarity. They were no longer just piecing together a man's past, they were witnessing the bridge between innocence and experience, between hope and guarded reality. Each revelation added layers to the story, layers that had the power to heal and transform. As Lily drifted off to sleep on the small couch, Emma stayed awake, reviewing their findings once more. She knew that the next step would be the most challenging yet. They would need to confront James directly to help him reconcile his past and to see whether the bonds of trust, formed unexpectedly through a child's innocent letter, could withstand the test of time and reality. The night wrapped the city in quiet reflection, and Emma felt a surge of determination. The story was far from over, but the layers of secrecy, pain, and hope were slowly unraveling. Tomorrow, they would step closer to the truth, closer to understanding not just James, but the profound effects of courage, empathy, and human connection. The day Emma had been preparing for had finally arrived. She stood by the window early that morning, watching the city slowly wake up. Cars moved lazily through the streets, shop shutters rolled up, and somewhere below, a street vendor was setting up his stall. Everything looked ordinary, painfully ordinary, and yet Emma's chest felt heavy, as if something irreversible was about to happen. Today, they would meet James, not by accident, not through rumors or fragments of memory, but face to face. Lily sat quietly at the small dining table, her legs swinging nervously. She had barely touched her breakfast. The excitement that once fueled her curiosity had transformed into something deeper, something closer to fear. "What if he doesn't want to talk to us?" Lily asked softly, not looking up. Emma turned and walked toward her, kneeling so they were at eye level. "Then we respect that," she said gently, "but we owe him honesty, and he deserves to know why your letter mattered so much." Lily nodded, gripping the edge of the table. "I just don't want to hurt him." Emma placed a reassuring hand over Lily's. "Sometimes truth hurts for a moment, but hiding it hurts for a lifetime." The meeting. They met James at the Riverside Park, the same place he used to visit in silence, the same bench that overlooked the slow-moving water. Emma had chosen it deliberately. If there was any place where James might feel safe enough to open up, it was here. James arrived early. He stood near the railing, hands in his coat pockets, staring at the river as if searching for answers beneath the surface. When he turned and saw Emma and Lily approaching, something flickered across his face. Surprise, hesitation, and then recognition. Lily froze. Emma gave her a small nod. They walked closer. "James," Emma said calmly. He exhaled slowly. "I wondered when I'd see you again." There was no anger in his voice, only tired curiosity. They sat on the bench, leaving a respectful distance between them. The river flowed quietly, carrying with it years of untold stories. "I read the letter again last night, every word. I thought it was coincidence at first, but now I know it wasn't." He turned toward Lily. "You remind me of someone I lost," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily swallowed hard. "My grandmother," she said. "She's the one who helped me write it." James' breath caught. Emma felt the shift immediately. The invisible wall James had built around himself cracked. The truth he never told. James stared at the water, his eyes distant. "My mother," he began, "used to write letters like that." Lily's eyes widened. She believed words could reach places people couldn't. When my father died, she wrote letters to keep herself from breaking, letters to God, letters to the future, letters she never sent. He paused, his jaw tightening. "She got sick when I was 16. Cancer. Fast. Ruthless." Emma remained silent, letting him speak at his own pace. "She used to tell me, if I ever leave without saying goodbye, read my letters." He laughed bitterly. "But I never found them." James finally turned toward Lily, his eyes glossy. "When I read your letter, it felt like her voice came back to me, like someone had reached into a part of my life I'd locked away." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. James shook his head slowly. "No, don't be. You gave me something I didn't even know I was still missing." A truth that changes everything. Emma took a breath. "James, there's something else." She pulled out the worn notebook, the one they had pieced together over weeks. Carefully, she opened it and placed it between them. "These are the places you used to go, the things you helped build, the people you touched without realizing it." James flipped through the pages slowly. His hands trembled. "I didn't think anyone noticed," he said. "They did, and they still do." Emma leaned back, closing his eyes. For the first time, the weight he had carried for decades seemed visible, raw, exposed, undeniable. I stopped believing in miracles, he said quietly, because every time I hoped, I lost something. Lily moved closer. But miracles don't always look big. Sometimes they're just reminders. James opened his eyes and looked at her, and in that moment, something shifted. The conversation didn't end at the bench. They walked, slowly, along the river, letting the tension dissolve with each step. Words flowed more easily now, as if once the first truth was spoken, the rest demanded to follow. James told them about the years after his mother's death, the isolation, the decision to stop forming attachments, the quiet life he chose so pain wouldn't find him again. I thought if I stayed invisible, I'd be safe, he admitted. Emma nodded. But safety without connection becomes loneliness. James smiled sadly. I know that now. Lily's confession. They stopped near a small footbridge. Lily hesitated, then took a deep breath. I was afraid you'd think I wrote the letter for attention, but I didn't. I just wanted someone to feel less alone. James crouched down to her level. You succeeded, he said softly, more than you know. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the worn letter, worn at the edges. I carried this everywhere because it reminded me that kindness still exists, even when the world feels cold. Lily smiled through her tears. The decision. As the sun began to set, casting golden reflections across the water, James stood quietly, thinking. There's something I need to do, he said finally. Emma looked at him. What is it? I need to stop running from my past and start honoring it. He turned to Lily. Your grandmother, she sounds like someone who understood what my mother did. Lily nodded. She said love doesn't end, it just changes shape. James closed his eyes. Then maybe it's time I let it change shape. A new beginning takes shape. They parted that evening with something none of them had expected. Peace. Not closure, not answers to everything, but peace. Emma watched James walk away, his posture lighter than before. Lily held her hand tightly. Do you think this is the end of the story? Emma smiled. No, I think it's the beginning of a better one. Because some stories aren't about loss. They're about what happens after loss, when someone finally chooses to feel again. And James had made that choice. Some endings don't arrive with noise. They don't come with applause, fireworks, or dramatic revelations. Some endings arrive quietly, like peace. A morning that felt different. James woke up before sunrise for the first time in years, not because of insomnia, not because of anxiety, but because something inside him felt lighter. The room was still dark, the city silent. He sat on the edge of his bed, hands resting on his knees, breathing slowly. For the first time, his chest didn't feel tight when he thought about the past. Instead, it felt full. He reached for the small wooden box on his bedside table, the one that had remained untouched for decades. Inside were the few things he had allowed himself to keep from his mother: an old watch, a faded photograph, and a bundle of letters tied with string. Letters he never had the courage to read. Until now. The letters he was afraid of. James untied the string with shaking fingers. The first letter was dated 27 years ago. My dear James, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't say goodbye the way I wanted to. Please forgive me for that. His breath hitched. I know you're afraid of pain. I see it in your eyes. But love is not what hurts us. Silence does. Don't disappear from the world just because I'm leaving it. Tears blurred the words. One day, someone will remind you that kindness still matters. When that happens, don't turn away. James closed his eyes. Lily's letter flashed in his mind. The miracle had been waiting for him, patiently, all these years. Emma's call. His phone buzzed softly. Emma. James, she said, her voice warm. I hope I'm not calling too early. No, he replied. Actually, it's perfect. There was a pause. I wanted to tell you, Emma continued. Lily's grandmother passed peacefully this morning. James felt a gentle ache. Not sharp, not overwhelming. Just human. She always said, Emma added, that if someone remembered love because of her, then her life was complete. James swallowed hard.
She saved me, he said honestly, even without knowing it. A visit he had been avoiding. Later that day, James stood in front of the old community center. The building looked smaller than I remembered. Faded paint, cracked steps. And yet, it was alive. Children's laughter echoed from inside. James hesitated, then pushed the door open. Inside, volunteers bustled around, setting up tables, organizing books, preparing meals. A woman looked up. "Can I help you?" James cleared his throat. "I used to volunteer here, long ago." Her eyes widened. "You're James?" He nodded. She smiled. "People still talk about you. You started the winter food drive, remember?" James hadn't remembered, but the world had. The choice. That afternoon, James sat alone again at the riverside bench, the same place where loneliness once consumed him. He placed Lily's letter on the bench, then his mother's letter beside it. 2 generations, 1 message. Don't disappear. James stood up. He took a breath. And for the first time in decades, he chose presence over protection. The city glowed with lights, but this Christmas felt different. James didn't decorate to remember the past. He decorated to welcome the present. At the community center, a modest Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with handmade ornaments, paper stars, and handwritten wishes from children. One card read, "I hope my grandma feels proud of me." James smiled softly. The gift that came back. During the small Christmas gathering, a little girl approached James. She held out a small, poorly wrapped box. "This is for you," she said shyly. James knelt down. "Why me?" She shrugged. "Because you smile like someone who understands." Inside the box was a simple bracelet made of colored thread. James laughed, a real laugh. He slipped it onto his wrist. Years ago, he had given everything away. And now, kindness had found its way back. Emma and Lily. Emma watched from a distance, her eyes shining. Lily tugged on her sleeve. "Is he happy now?" Emma nodded. "Yes, because he stopped hiding." Lily thought for a moment. "Then my letter worked." Emma smiled. It did more than that. It reminded him who he was. The final truth. Later that night, James returned home and sat by the window. He looked at the city lights, not as strangers, but as lives connected to his own. He opened his notebook and wrote one final sentence. "Miracles don't arrive when you ask for them. They arrive when you're finally ready to feel again." James wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He didn't have a perfect family waiting at home. But he had something far rarer. Purpose. The ending that matters. Some people search for miracles in noise, but the real ones, they arrive quietly, in letters written by children, in kindness given without expectation, in the courage to stop being invisible. James learned that the hard way. And because of that, he never disappeared again.